Hi, friends. Just a quick note before we jump into this week's episode. In Stride is brought to you by Ride IQ. Ride IQ is a first of its kind equestrian coaching platform that will transform your independent schooling rides. Ride IQ members get access to the private mobile app with hundreds of on demand listen while you ride audio lessons taught by top eventing, jumper, and dressage coaches. And since you like podcasts, the Ride IQ app also includes over 100 exclusive podcast episodes to keep you company during your hacks, your commute, your barn chores, or whatever it is you do while you listen. Membership is only $29.99 per month, and every membership automatically includes a 2-week unlimited access free trial. Get started by downloading the Ride IQ mobile app on iPhone or Android. On today's episode of In Stride, Sinead talks with Joe Meyer. Joe is a Kiwi 5-star event rider. He represented New Zealand in the 2008 Beijing Olympic Games and the 2006 World Equestrian Games. Joe has had numerous top placings at the most prestigious 5-star events in the world. Today, Joe is continuing his competitive career in the United States and is based in Ocala, Florida with his wife Ruthie. On this episode, Sinead and Joe are talking about how culture affects perseverance. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Okay, everybody, I'm so excited today. We have Joe Meyer on our show, and I actually hopped on the phone, Joe, with you last week because I just had some questions about, traveling up the East Coast and questions about visas, and all of a sudden I realized it would just be so awesome to get you on the show because, I've known you forever in this sport, and when I was growing up you were an idol of mine, and you're still an idol of mine in this sport, but now you happen to be my neighbor, which is awesome. But when I was going back and looking through, doing a little research, which is kind of fun, what I get to do for this show, it really is quite amazing that you've lived in 3 different countries. You've competed at the top and the pinnacle of the sport for, well over 20 years, competed at world championships, Olympic Games, moved from New Zealand to the UK, to the United States. And every time I see you, I feel like you have this incredible balance of you're always moving, but you never look like you're in a hurry. And I don't think I've ever seen you on either end of that spectrum. And I just thought it would be so fun to kind of figure out what's your secret to the fountain of youth. Like, how are you, how have you managed to, have such incredible longevity in this sport and still seem so cool? So if you could answer that.
Oh, well,
it would be great.
It's a very hard question, but I think that I've been very lucky, and I grew up in New Zealand, of course, and I was born into a big horse family, and we had a big horse farm, and horses wasn't the first thing that we did. We were farmers. We, bred sheep and cattle, but our whole family was in horses. Like my father played polo and rode eventing and trained racehorses, and my mum won the national championship and things, and my grandparents were judges and they hunted, and so I kind of didn't really have much option, and so
yeah.
But before I go more into that, but between going from New Zealand and then I grew up in New Zealand. I started my eventing there, and then I got to the point where I was just desperate to go and ride at 5-star level, and so you had to move to England to do that, and stayed there for quite a long time, and then as times changed, came to live here in the United States, and so I guess with each move, there's a set of new challenges and more energy that you can put into things. I guess it's kept me from being stale in the sport,
Yeah.
and also meet a lot of new people all the time. Part of what I really enjoy doing, I love traveling, and so when I was living in England, I was one of the people that was always going to Spain or going to Portugal or going on the tours around. And it was not uncommon to compete in 5 or 6 different countries in a year, So, but the culture, the people, the different things, the different horse shows and the traveling and to be honest, my friends and fun and parties and stuff that we did. So it was always kind of like, it was never a chore, and it was a fantastic time. And so I guess coming to the United States, same sort of thing, like, we travel a lot, we go to get to do really cool things, and it's part of this lifestyle. We travel to Ireland to buy horses, go to England to buy horses, go up and down the East Coast and things, and meet different people and stuff. And so that's kind of what helps keep me a little bit fresh.
And do you think it was in that, like, I mean, the move from, let's back up, the move from New Zealand to the UK, I mean, that's a pretty big deal. Like, how old were you when you did that, and how did that get orchestrated?
So I was around about 25 at the time, and I'd already been to the UK on a couple of trips. My first trip, I was 21 years old, and I groomed for Anna Hilton, and I groomed for her going to Le Moulin in Germany, and it was like my big first overseas trip, which was very, very exciting. And
were you working for her, or how did that?
No, I was actually a working student at Rodney Powell's place, and with the way it works, he turned around to me and said, "Do you want to go and groom at Le Moulin? I've got a friend that needs a groom." And I'm like, "Oh yes, I'll go." Sign me up. I mean, like that, I thought that was the most exciting thing ever, especially with my last name being Meyer and going to Germany. I thought this is going to be cool. So, but I was always up for things like that. So that I'd been a couple of times, and I was a working student for Rodney. And then the next time I went back, he'd had a big fall and he was in hospital. And so I rode a few horses at the barn for him, and just lower level ones. They weren't going to let me get going on the big ones or anything. But, and I ended up doing a bit more and meeting a few more people and things and stuff. And then, so it was time to take a horse over. We were doing pretty good in New Zealand. Like, we'd riding advanced and going around, jumping clear and winning prizes and things. And we moved up to England, and it was like, oh goodness me, so now we're a very, very small fish in a very large pond, So, but that's why I did it. Dan Jocelyn and I are very good friends, and our horses went on the same flight.
Oh, wow.
Up to England. And I started, because I'd been a working student at the Powells, I started there for the first year, just because it was something that I knew, and things.
And where was he then? Was he at the same yard?
Well, he'd actually, the time that I first went as a working student, he'd just won badminton, and he'd just moved into that place.
No kidding.
So I've only ever known him in that place, but I can tell you from where it started and to where it is now has been a huge change, in the time. They were always building this and renovating that and doing stuff, so it turned into a very nice place. I started off there, and I had help from Rodney and help from Alex and things, and just never really had any luck, to be honest, at the beginning. I had a nice horse, but couldn't keep it on the road, couldn't keep it sound, those sorts of stuff, and just learning. I guess, just going through bits and pieces of learning how tough it is.
That's kind of the ride. It seems like sometimes you get I think that's probably a blessing, right? Like, you get a taste of it when you're young, and then you think, oh, I got it, right? Like, I'm just going to do this, and then I'm going to go to the Olympics, and then I'm going to do this, and then by the time I'm 26, I'll figure out what to do after that, And
right, and that is how you think, and it does not work that way. And it would have been good if someone could have helped me out a little bit and brought me into reality in a good way, instead of sort of, you get people that tell you you're amazing and you're going to do this, and then there's people that turn around and tell you that you're not very good at all. And
right.
So like, that would be sort of, if I was mentoring younger people coming through, I would break it down where they're at, what the story is, what they're going to have to do to achieve their goals in a
Mm-hmm.
realistic way, like that,
Mm-hmm.
so that people don't get false illusions.
Yeah. And do you think that's a cultural thing? Like I certainly found when I first moved to England, I struggled a lot, and I didn't actually find, I ended up almost coming home and then ended up moving from the yard that I was at and moved down south and finally got into a team that was very helpful. But for the first 6 months, I mean, I was like fish out of water and there wasn't any help.
Yeah,
I struggled.
I hate to say it, and I don't want to. It's not a stereotype of everybody in England for sure, but there are people that look at you when you arrive and think, what do you think you're doing, and who the hell do you think you are? And it's just sort of the nature of the beast a little bit. I think it's the a lot of people, a lot of bad weather, a lot of people crammed in together and stuff, and people become a bit more cynical. Whereas the opposite happened moving to America, which was hello, how are you, welcome, the whole thing. The contrast, I mean, it was 16 years apart, so maybe I was kind of looking at it a little bit different, so I'm not but the contrast between moving to England and moving to America, huge right. different. So I guess it's a cultural thing, and I'm not saying that they're all like that. There are great people there, but there's a lot of people that are looking down their nose at you and a little bit like, who the hell do you think you are? and when you're coming from a country where you've been at the top and you think you're going to be amazing and all the rest of it, it's looking back now, it's kind of like, oh, I wish I'd just like kept my head down and but I suppose I did, but it just might have been a little bit easier if someone had said, this is what you need to do.
Here's a little bit of a roadmap.
Here's a bit of advice.
No, I certainly got that. I certainly got that upon arrival, and then kind of hunted around and found that place. And I think that that's like a really interesting thing that you hit on, as far as like, there's a lot of young people now that are heading over to overseas to spend the summer or a season or whatnot, but having advice from someone like you or somebody that's over there, some of the Americans that are based over there, to help kind of guide that way makes it so much easier. But because, I mean, no matter what, when you're in your mid-20s, you kind of go over and like, hey, I've arrived, and it gets, and then it can be a real confidence killer. And especially if things aren't going great from the get-go, it's pretty difficult. And so were you, when you brought the horse over, were you working for someone, or were you were just based at Rods?
No. So what I did for the first season, I was based at Rodney's, and so the people that had helped me do the trip and things, my family and stuff, had said, look, why don't you do this and base yourself there and be I was like a working student, but in those days you had to also pay for the keep of your horse and pay for being at the place. And so it was kind of like being a paying student, but if you see what I mean, it wasn't like it was times have changed a little bit. So, I was paying to be there, but I had great facilities and he could take me to the shows, and, it was good. It was a good learning experience. And they were really cool to me as well, because like, there came a time when I turned around and I said, look, you guys, the vet bills and things are a little bit more than I'd anticipated. I'd really like to get an outside job. Is that going to be okay? And then I went and worked and did farm work for at one of the farms down the road, where Bruno Gorens, who's one of the at Little Park, and I went there and I did stuff for them and bits and pieces, and so because it was just not in my nature to sit around and doing it, you know what I mean? It was like, and if I wanted to go out to the pub and have dinner, I needed to be like earning my own money at the same time. So I was lucky, like, they allowed me to do that.
So you went and did some farming stuff. What do you mean? What did you do?
Well, they just bought that farm, Eber and Bruno, and like they were turning it from a farm into a horse farm. So it needed all the barbed wire taken off the post and railed fences and things like that, and just
So
boy
you're doing good
jobs.
old just boy jobs.
Yeah.
I need somebody at the farm here that'll just come and do boy jobs. It's hard to find these days.
No.
That's so awesome. So you were there
Yeah.
but you ended up staying for 16 years.
Well, yeah.
Is that
So
right?
I went home. Yeah, I did. I went home from the. I went home for the winter, the English winter, which is New Zealand summer, and
Good
came
idea.
back came back the next year. And the next year, my wife and I were based at the Greens, at David Green's.
Yeah.
And Jackie and David was kind of he was riding at the top level, but he was sort of not really wanting to ride a huge amount of horses, which was cool because I got to ride a lot of other horses as well.
Gotcha.
And we broke in horses and things and bits and pieces and stuff, and so and did pretty well. So I was sort of based out of there for a year, and then after that moved around in a few different places in England, a little bit closer to London.
Okay, got you. And when did things kind of turn around for you? Like, what was the shift? Because obviously you did incredibly well. So something must have spiraled in the right direction.
All right, so I was always going okay, but never really getting going that well. And we, like I had reasonable horses and little Snip, who was probably the best horse I ever had. He injured his high suspensory 3 years in a row. Which was, but just not a lot, just a little bit.
Right.
And just so, but just enough and things like that. So I was never really getting there. And then we were in this one barn, and then Foot and Mouth came along. I don't know if you remember that. There was the Foot and Mouth year. And so eventing stopped. It was a bit like COVID, like no eventing for 6 weeks, 2 months or whatever it was. And I was in this one barn. I didn't really like it. So I started looking around, found another barn that I really liked and did a deal to get in there. And so we had this little house close to the other barn, and a friend of ours turned around and said, well, I've got this big house in London. Do you want to come and live with me? And it would mean that Joe would have to commute, but you wouldn't have any rent to pay. And, the new barn was quite a bit more extra money and stuff. So that's what we did. Now, the funny bit is I lived in London for 4 years and in central London, and it was fun. Had a lot of fun, a lot of New Zealanders living there, Australians and South Africans, and a lot of expats, and it was amazing. My commute out wasn't too bad.
How long was the commute?
It was about 45 minutes, 50 minutes.
Okay.
So as far as London terms go, it wasn't too bad. But I just did stuff. I would like do business and things and talk to people on the phone and do stuff. I used that time. Yeah. And I was always going against the grain on the commute.
Right.
I was going out with people coming in, and so it wasn't so bad. But in the weekends, we'd stay in the horse box at the barn for the whole time, and then we ended up getting an apartment at the barn, and then we ended up leaving London, and that's when things started to go really well. because suddenly there was, I thought I was doing okay, and I was putting in the effort required, and I'd ridden it some 5 stars and things. But once I started to get more concentrated with the horses and not as many distractions and friends ringing up and saying, oh, well, we're in your neck of the woods, would you want to come out for a drink or something? And I'd be like, yeah, because I'm the social kind of person. So it was kind of in that type of time that I was like, so once I started living on the barn again and on the yard and doing stuff, things started to get going. The horses started to get more of a team of horses and things. And once I'd got a few 5 stars under my belt, I started to get a much better idea of what you needed to do. you know,
Yeah.
right. Because it was it was never easy. Like at the beginning, you think you know what you're doing, but you know, you've sort of, until you've actually get a few going and get a few horses going and things like that, things start to go, you know. But
so,
I mean,
what was it? What was it? What was it? The amount of work? Was it the detail? Was it spending more time with the horses? What was it that you?
Yeah, it was spending more time with the horses, and it was being there to just do that little bit extra, you know, like I could spend a bit more time at the gallops because I was never worried about getting home and driving. I could do,
Right.
you know what I mean? It was kind of like I would go to I was taking much more serious dressage lessons with my trainer up the road because like I had more time to do it. So cut out those 2 hours in the morning and the evening and live at the same place.
Yeah.
Was giving me the chance to do it. Now, I mean, I'm not the kind of person that wants to live like right there on my barn, because what I've found is that when you live there, there's always someone knocking on the door, you know. Yeah. There's always, can we do this? Can we do that? You know, or something or whatever, and all the rest of it. I like to do it just like I do at the moment, where I'm literally less than 5 minutes away.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So that no one knocks on the door, they send me a text message instead. But I can be there at a moment's notice, and I'm not under any time pressure to be there, you know.
Yeah. Well, the Ocala traffic isn't quite like the London traffic quite yet.
No, exactly. Exactly.
We might get there. This is very interesting. So the horses then that you were riding, were they, did you find owners in England, or did you have people back in New Zealand that were helping, or how did that work? Like, obviously that it's very influential when you're in a different country trying to get people to support a rider from a different country.
Right. So, I rode a lot of homebreds, and we had a good breeding program at home, and we've had some very famous horses bred charisma, in the past. Yeah, I feel like. You know, exactly. So you know, so I was lucky enough to have a few homebreds coming through, which was brilliant. And I was always trying to get owners and to help me out and things. And I started off by, you know, just sort of getting owners and doing a little bit of dealing and producing horses and selling and things like that. My ex-wife had a job in London, and that helped keep things going, as well as, you know, selling horses, teaching, and just being a sort of jack of all trades, really. Yeah. But some of the horses came to me because they were too difficult for other people. I had a really awesome horse called Black Andy, who was bought for by an owner for her daughter, and they didn't click, and so he ended up with me, and he did click because I was a New Zealander, so they said, well, New Zealand horse, put him with the New Zealander, you know, he should know how to ride him.
Yeah, exactly.
And stuff, and so that helped. But it was, we were always, you know, just trying to, there's a little bit of everything, you know. I was breaking in horses for people and getting things going and doing stuff, but yeah, always trying to look for owners. And the other thing that's worth mentioning is that in Great Britain, there's a lot of different people from different countries, okay, competing there. And that is the norm. Okay, so what has happened there is that a lot of owners are, if you want to go and have a horse that may go to a championship or go to an Olympic Games or badminton or something, it's not a disadvantage to have it with an international rider of a different nationality, because, you know, there's so many slots at Le Lion d'Angers. There's so many slots at Buccolo. There's so many slots, you know, for the international riders. And so actually it's an advantage, you know. Yeah. They say my horse can go to Le Lion d'Angers because New Zealand's only taking 4, whereas there's a wait list for Great Britain. Okay. So that there's a few people that don't mind having a Kiwi, as their rider. So whereas over here it's not really the same scenario, and it's a little bit of a shame that isn't embraced more here, because when I used to go to a lot of international events, especially on the continent, they were really proud to have a lot of different flags and a lot of different countries and people competing. And it's kind of it's just the nature of the beast here. We don't have a lot of people. It's a big country. America's a massive place. We've just got Canada and a few South Americans, so in reality. It's probably never going to be the same, but in England, so that's what we did. There were people that were quite keen to be horse owners and stuff, but it was never something that was ever going to make you rich.
Right.
You could get by, and you would be, if you were very clever, you would be lucky enough to buy property or something, but it was not ever something that you could make a good living, a serious. It was, so you were treading water for the privilege of riding horses and competing at the big shows.
Yeah,
which
100%.
Which when you're between 25 and 35, that's all you want to do anyway.
Yeah.
So that was fine. Didn't matter. But as you get older, you start to think, oh, hang on a minute. I've got children now, and I've got, what am I going to do? And college is coming, and it becomes sort of slightly different.
A different ball. Well, and also for that block of time being in the UK, you have so much access to so many amazing venues in different countries, and it is inspiring for some of the owners to back a rider that has the opportunity to go to all these, because it's a hell of a lot of fun. I mean, like it's a really good time. And here it's such a big ordeal and a very expensive ordeal to get to go to Buccleuch or Lemuelin or Badminton or Burghley or anything like that. We certainly have a few destination events like, that are really fun, like Bromont or Rebecca Farm, but it's still quite an undertaking to get there. Where it feels like a really good time. And I still feel like some of those European events are just second to none. I mean, it's an experience worth paying for. So at that age, you can do a lot of cool things in that country. But then you kind of got to figure out, after a little bit, what's next. So you're doing all of this over in England. You're going to the World Championships. You ended up going to Beijing. You were still in England when you went to Beijing, correct? Yeah. Years are just blending together for me. I'm trying. So all of that's going on, and then and how is it working with Team New Zealand in England? Were you well supported there, or did you feel like you were kind of on your own? Because I know there's a huge contingency of New Zealand riders in England now. Then there's a big system, like a big foundational system there. How was it when you were there?
So initially, for the first few years, we were the generation down was fairly much just ignored. We weren't. The attitude was back then, and this is a while ago now, that you got yourself up to the top level on your own, and once you were good enough, you started to get support, and things went on from there. And that is, and I think the people that were in charge will disagree with me, but back then, but that is what I think this is what happened. Now, once we got going. And started to become good enough to get on teams. Yes, there was some great support, and we had coaches and support staff and people coming in to sit with us, go through our plans, setting out some funding for us and things, and saying, what do you need and how are you going to get better, and these sorts of things. So once you sort of got in and got good enough, then it was good. Now, Times have changed, and now the New Zealand team is much more looking down further into their younger riders, and how, because what happened was we had the dream team back in the day of Mark Todd and Blythe Tate and Vaughan Jefferson and Andrew Nicholson and Vicky Latta, and there was Andrew Scott, and I hope Trudy Boyce. I hope I haven't missed anybody out. Vicky. Think of it now for a second. And there was this nucleus of really, really good people, and they could sort of just round themselves up, go to a championship, and probably win it, and things aren't like that anymore. Times have changed. We've got the prices that are sort of the bulk of our team. Yeah. And around it, now we're starting to have to say, right, what are we going to do to put it together? So I know that there's a lot going on in the UK and in New Zealand, trying to push some of the funding and the support and coaching down the line a little bit, and not just keep it at the top level.
And do you think that it's possible to stay in New Zealand and be successful? I know that there's a handful of people that have come back and forth and that type of thing. Or do you think to really get to the top, they need to be in England?
I mean, it has been done for sure. The Vaughan Jeffers went from New Zealand, based himself in England, won the World Championships. It has been done that, but and there are people that like to live in New Zealand. They like the culture, the atmosphere, and the level of pressure that they have there. Okay, and it kind of is better for them. So I'm not going to say never, but I think some sort of stint, at least for a bit in England, is necessary.
Just to see where the bar is,
to see where the level is, and to get an idea of the level. I don't think that you can produce yourself to a point in New Zealand and think that you're going to go out on the world stage and be competitive against the world. I don't think that can't happen. I think you've got to. I think once you've been up in the UK for long enough, and you know where you've got to be, and you know how good you've got to be, and what you've got to do, and all the rest of it. Yes, I think you could probably go in and out a little bit. But I think that you've got to figure out how tough it is. I mean, and just now, it's all very well to watch it on the television. But you look at badminton, this last badminton, and we were lucky enough to see Michael Young ride a very good dressage test at Kentucky. Yeah. But take that almost times 5 or 6 at the same show, and be there and watch it live, and watch and watch these people warm up and what they do and all of that. That's not replaceable. You have to do that.
Yeah. And that it's not this elusive thing. It actually, these people are doing it 5 and 10-fold, and the horses are completely out of this world, it's kind of wild. So fast forward, and this will be a question, might put you on the spot a little bit. What do you think compared it for the United States, for US riders? I mean, do you think there's a little bit of that disillusion sometimes when people are based here to be able to go and compete in Europe and on the world stage? Because we've certainly had combinations that have been incredibly successful in the US and have gone and had some success in England. But, we're getting back there now. But do you think that it's possible here to get the exposure and the experience that you need to really keep up?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough here because it's not cheap. Okay. And so honing your skills and learning, you've got to be able to finance yourself in one way or another. And that takes commitment. So you can't just up and leave what you've done to go and compete in England. All right. Right. If you sort of follow me here. Whereas in New Zealand, growing up, things were a lot less expensive, and we could become quite good up through the levels before we had to go and invest ourselves. I think that American riders could be good, but there are a few that should be given a one-way ticket to England, and not to be come back for 5 years.
Yeah.
to go and get themselves, immersed in it. And the one thing that I think we could be very good, but I think that we lack a little bit of just deep down hard grittiness that is ingrained in these English people. And a lot of it, I think partly because of the culture and adversity. Okay. And so we have some pretty nice places here, and we have some people that, have got some very nice, expensive horses and very nice places. And I went shopping at the end of last year, and I went to 3 Olympians barns and 1 Olympian show jumper. And I can tell you that they were not the prettiest places in the world. But what's coming out of the stall is.
Right.
And these people are used to crappy weather, getting wet, riding in the mud, doing all of these things, whereas I think we might just be a little bit more, a little bit softer here.
Yeah. No, completely valid.
And I think also a little bit, and people are not going to like this, but where we grew up in New Zealand, if we made mistakes and missed our horses at fences or did silly things or did stupid things, our friends would pay out on us big time. And the peer pressure of what do you think you were doing, you idiot? And, and that's, and always, it wasn't like, you are terrible, and, and with expletives and stuff. And so that's part of what we grew up with. And you're like, okay, I'm not going to do that again, because all my mates are going to hassle me and stuff. We don't do that here. We're all just a little bit nice, and probably take ourselves a little bit too seriously. Where, as opposed to saying, we just got to get out there and just get stuck in and get it done. But no, I think that the same rules apply. Americans have got to get over there and compete in the big competitions. And if it doesn't go well, try again and again and again until they can figure it out, instead of sort of come back home and take it a little bit easier. And people won't like what I've got to say, because I think they all think that they're working very hard already. But compared to the people that are winning and are at the top of the world rankings, most of them are self-made and work extremely hard to do what they'd have to do.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't actually thought about it that much. I mean, I've thought about that in that context a bit, but not to that extreme. I mean, completely. I mean, here it is. I mean, it's just it is a different lifestyle, isn't it? You kind of get used to these different, I guess it's hard when you have access to such amazing facilities and such amazing arenas and such that you kind of get a little spoiled, don't you? You're like, this is the norm.
We are so super lucky. Most places that we go to compete, and even the venues that aren't quite as flash, we have surfaces to ride on and beautiful jumps, and the courses are done beautifully, and the ground is generally fairly good, probably a bit firmer than anything you'd find in the UK. And just little things. When I'm looking at a horse's record, when I see that it's had a terrible show jumping, it's either it's a terrible horse, or it might have been on a side of a hill in a bog that day, which happens a lot. So whereas over we have pristine services. We're super lucky. Don't worry, I'm not complaining. I love it. We're very lucky. But I think sometimes a little bit of adversity and a little bit of sort of having to just get on and do it is good for people.
It's interesting when I was working for William, he definitely had a 2-star, well, 2-star, 3-star now. Like any of his horses that were 3-star and below, he would pretty much always run them fast. if the footing was bad, he didn't really care. They went open front boots cross country, and he's a wonderful horseman and was wonderful with his horses. But he was like, he did not treat them precious until they got to a certain level. And then he would kind of pick and choose his events per se. But it's, like here we do that a lot. If the ground's a little firm, if the ground's a little this, and we're running our novice horse,
Yeah.
we won't go or we'll withdraw or anything like that. Now, to be fair, if it's our one only horse that we have, we're going to be a little bit precious with it and that type of thing. But it definitely, there is this underlying, it's a cultural thing of how to get that, that adversity or get a little bit tougher without almost unintentionally, like how do you integrate that, or how do we figure out a way to make what we do have, like capitalize on that, like how do we do that? And I guess what you're saying is right, is we've got to get on a plane and go to England or go someplace where it's just going to be thrown at our face and there's nothing we can do about it. It was funny. I went to Blenheim a couple years ago, and it struck me. I just thought about this when you said it, but the weather was horrible, and there was tons of rain, and they're jumping on grass, and and the 4-star was going in the afternoon, show jumping in the afternoon, and they brought in like the whole fox hunt was doing a demonstration in the same arena that the dressage had been in, and so you saw where there was mud from the rails. Then all the hounds came in, all the horses came in. They did this huge demo, and then on top of that footing, they put all the show jumps, and it was wild because there were several American horses actually that just couldn't tolerate, like they're slipping and sliding and rails are flying. And, at home that would never happen. Like the footing, it would have to be perfectly drugged. Like if there was a line out of place, or the halftime show would have been canceled. And they're like, deal with it, right? It's a 4-star. You got to handle it. It was really, really interesting. So then you're in the UK, all of this is going awesome. And then what made you now make this next big jump to the US? Did you start traveling to the US? Did you start with your sales stuff? Did you meet, like, how did that work?
Well, to be brutally honest,
it's
a new wife.
Oh, new wife, new life. Yeah.
A new wife and a new life. And so it came to the point where I looked around at the horses that I had. And I had 2 5-star horses left. Mm-hmm. One was at the end of his career. One had about another, 2 or 3 years left. Mm-hmm. And I knew I was going to have to build a new team of horses. And the choices was to, after my divorce, the place was being sold and that sort of thing. Start up again somewhere else in England, or see how things went in America. And so that was the start of things. And I got to the point where I really enjoyed England and I love the big events, but I really felt like I needed some new challenges. And I wanted to see if I could make a good living here. Right. The weather was a big thing in this too. Actually, I mean,
I do.
I had got sick of the weather. I mean, I grew up with reasonably good weather in New Zealand. Okay, it wasn't perfect, but it was reasonably good. And the weather in England was miserable and cold, and I just hated it. I really enjoyed traveling to all the events everywhere and things, but it was just time to I just felt like I needed to do something else. And so that was the story. And you know exactly what I'm saying is when you start to look at your horsepower and you say, okay, I've got to build a new team. Okay. That's a big commitment. Okay. And you can't just sort of do it half-heartedly here and there, so that's why. That's what made me move here. And took a little bit longer to get established than I'd thought, but that did have the other good horses going a little bit. But it always takes longer than you think. Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things. And then we started to get into a few more decent horses here and got selling them and things. And it became different, as opposed to competing at a million zillion events sort of all over the place. Suddenly, I was sort of more in Ocala. But I have to say, in the last 5 years, I'm probably as busy now as I ever was.
Yeah.
Because of all the new events that we have here and everything going on. So it kind of went in stages. Moving here was more sort of producing some young horses and teaching and selling and doing things for the first little bit until I started to get it. Now I've got a team of horses. Now I'm back riding again, going to shows again, and a little bit less teaching and a bit more horse dealing, So
Yep. And did you come straight to Ocala?
Pretty much. Yeah. It had a little sort of a mid-interim farm out in the central Florida, way out from Rocking Horse for a little bit, owned by a really good friend, which was fun. And then, we came straight to Ocala.
Ocala. And where so when you came over, was the new challenge you were thinking, okay, this seems like a great place to make a business, like to have a business in sales and to figure out that next step.
No, that was the next step. I was 40 years old at that point. And so I was starting to think, okay, I need to earn some money in my life.
Yeah.
Was one of the things I've got to do. I can't just sort of go from horse show to horse show, and as much as I loved it and things, I was kind of like, all right, this is what I've got to do. And I started, and the children were very young, but I know they were going to grow up and things, and we were separated. And so I had to start to think forward about how to make a business doing the things that I had the skills for,
right,
and the experience for, with and still being able to do the things that I love doing, which is competing.
Yeah. And did anything when you came here, was anything a surprise, or did it took a little bit of time, but it kind of went as you thought? Or
I mean, one of the biggest surprises was no prize money. I won a bunch of classes, and Ruthie, I said, well, where's the prize money? Ruthie said, there isn't any. I said, well, what are we doing this for? She said, glory. What do you mean
belt.
Glory? I don't care about glory. I just want some prize money. So that was a bit of a shock. The cost of entries and things was also a bit of a shock and and stuff. But it weighs off, like cost of living here. I mean, is much less than in England, where it is crazy. It's very expensive to live, and so it sort of swings and roundabouts. But that was a surprise. There was the odd weird person. There was like that. No, seriously, like you go and teach a clinic somewhere, right? And I just want to go and teach a clinic. I don't want to take anyone's clients. I don't want to do anything like that. I just want to go and teach a clinic, meet a few people. Maybe they'll like me and they'll come and buy a horse off me in the future. Yeah. Okay, that's what's in my head.
Yeah.
And then you get these weird people. Oh, you can't go to that Joe Meyer clinic because they're worried that their students might want to get a lesson from you or something, or what. It was like I've never struck anything like that in my life. It was the weirdest thing that I'd ever heard of, because over in England especially, people just did their own stuff, trained who they wanted with. There was no real culture of training, and there was no click. And so it was just I was just like, what is going on? Like, you're not allowed to come to my clinic. And that was a weird one.
Yeah.
That was really weird. But, but now I'm kind of like, I'm kind of like, well, you know what? I'm kind of secure enough in myself that if someone wants to come and have a lesson, they will. And if they don't, they don't. And that's fine.
Door swings both ways.
Yeah. Exactly.
I know. It's always amazing when I hear things like that it's, you probably don't want that person anyway.
No, you don't.
It doesn't.
No,
it's more of a headache than it's worth.
Yeah.
And then, so did you take a little bit of a step back when you came here as far as the competitive horses? It sounds like you brought two with you, but then did you take a little back to build the business, and with the goal always of building another string, or were you just going to kind of see how it went?
Well, yes, the goal was to build another string of horses, but because we were starting a brand new life, we had very little little funds to be able to start. So we had to, we couldn't do some of the things we really wanted to do. And I remember one of the first Rolexes we went to, I wanted to go and get some bits and pieces. And Ruthie said, don't buy sponges because you'll get them up there. As if to say, we can't afford to buy sponges. Okay. And so we went through that stage, and actually it's not a bad thing for anyone to have to do, but it was kind of like we had to make serious decisions and choices on what we could afford to do and how we were going to do it and what was going to be the best for networking, publicity, and getting my name out there and trying to enjoy ourselves and do the thing that we like doing, so that was So that was the balance. So yes, initially, no, I wasn't competing nearly as much as I am now, or be able to do those things. And so probably wasn't a step back that I really wanted to take, but I guess it was a forced one because we didn't have any other options. We had to start off teaching and selling and doing bits and pieces. And now we've built ourselves up, a lot more, that it's funny to look back at some of the things that we couldn't do, but that's just part of it,
Yeah. It helps you appreciate when you can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what year was that you moved?
That was like 2011.
Because really you guys were some of the first ones that were down here full time. I mean, now there's a ton of us that live here all year round, but really you guys were kind of capitalizing on, well, I don't know if it was capitalizing. I don't know what it was, but on being down here before everything really took off. And now it's kind of wild.
I know. Amazing. And it's, what? I've never ever been in the right place in the right time in my life, except now, I've always ended up in the wrong place, and so it was really cool to actually turn up and live in a town that just took off and boomed.
Yeah.
So that was fantastic. No, we didn't go up north, Sinead, because we didn't have a farm up north to go to. We had a farm here. We had to make the best of it.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened. And then, so I was here, the Laws were here, and then Clayton Fredericks moved here, and then the Trayfords came over.
Yeah,
and
you started a trend.
Yeah, but each of those people, each of those people added something to the community, whether it be more horses coming in, more shows being constructed, things starting. So that's, so the influx of the foreigners was a good thing for Ocala.
Absolutely.
To get everything up and running. And now it's not, people don't look at you quite so sideways as you when you say I spend the summer in Ocala. Whereas beforehand it was like, how can you dare do it? Until you travel around America a little bit and you realize it's just as hot everywhere else.
Yeah.
The ground is like concrete. Yeah. And now we're cool because we can just go to the WEC and jump in the AC if we really want. So,
couldn't have planned it better.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for all that, Joe.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That is awesome. So, and then, you guys, and I'm one or two more questions, and I will get to these, but I'm just so interested. So, the sales part. So you and Ruthie really. Have a wonderful operation of sales and and being agents, and also going overseas and doing that type of thing. Was that always part of your plan? But you're so social. It obviously came like hand in hand. You just put that together. I mean, is that something you really enjoy doing?
Well, yes. And you see, at the very beginning, that was something that came. I hadn't done it before. I hadn't been an agent and taken people around horse shopping or anything, but it was something that came extremely easy to me.
Yeah.
Because of a few factors. Is one, I knew everybody in England as it was. Number two, I knew how to get around fast. The best places to stay, the nicest gastro pubs, and the friends with nice big houses. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I had all this knowledge.
Yeah.
And so I was able to take people to buy horses in England. I did a lot of trips, but I was able to find nice horses at a reasonable price that, because when people see Americans coming, they're kind of cha-ching, a little bit. I could sort of go in under the radar and find these horses and things and do deals and take people, and we were getting great horses. But it really helps that I know the lay of the land, because I can go around and I know how to get from A to B without and where the traffic is and what how to do a trip around England without getting stuck somewhere, because I could put people in front of a lot more horses than they'd ever be able to do themselves. So that was one thing. I mean, Ruthie's always been good at selling stuff, and we have a funny saying in our house that if you stand around long enough, you'll get a price tag put on you. So but so she's always been really good at that, and so she's been a fantastic agent for sales. She's also seems to have this photographic memory for horses and can remember every single horse she sold and every horse around the place, whereas for me it's a little bit of a blur. Okay, so so she, when I tell clients,
you're a good pair.
We are a great pair because we're completely different in a lot of ways, but very similar in others. And so when I tell clients that she probably knows where every horse in Ocala is, she probably does, And so that's something that we've done also. And most of our advertising has been word of mouth and on Facebook, which has been great. And so we started with the trips taking people over to sell, and then we'd have, everybody's horses here in Ocala that she was agenting and stuff. And we had, a couple of investors get in and want to buy a horse to bring over as an investment opportunity. So did a few of those, and then there's the ones, the sales that come along, the auctions. And when I was getting my green card, I couldn't travel quite as much. So Ruthie started traveling. She'd go to the auctions, and buying horses from there. And it's just a question of knowing what the market is looking for, knowing what you're buying, and doing the equations between how long it's going to take you to get horse from point A, what you're buying, to point B, what the market would like to buy, and what it will cost you in between, and how to make that work. Ruthie's got a fantastic eye for horses, and I am more like, I'd rather not pick my own horses. I would rather someone did it for me, and just they arrive in the barn and I can start training them. Okay, that seriously,
You're like Tick. He's like, is it brown? What's its name? I don't know. Just put it in the crossed eyes and I'll ride it.
Right. No, exactly. I would. It's been like that my whole life. The homebreds coming up from home and stuff, you didn't have a choice. This was the horse. So get on with it. And then, so that's, so over time with the sales business, we've been able to slowly but surely start buying our own investment horses. And as well as, so we have some investors, and we have, ourselves buying horses, bringing them over and selling them. And things have sort of gone from strength to strength in that way,
and where do you see this is a little loaded question. Where do you see the next 10 years? Where do you see keep doing the same thing, evolving certain ways? Are there still team aspirations there? What's the...
I have got team aspirations. I'm going to have to get stuck in and do well though. I think I've got to really fire at 4-star and stuff over here, and 5-star, and I might have to go to badminton and run around clear or something like that. I'm under no illusions that if I just mince around, then nothing's going to happen here. So I'm gonna have to, if I want to do anything team wise, I'm gonna have to really get stuck in. I've still got team aspirations, and I still feel pretty good. I don't feel like I'm that old or anything. But, in 10 years time, I'm going to be 61. And so I guess at that point, I don't know what just
go with the flow.
We'll have to see. I mean, I think producing horses is something that we can both do very easily, and producing the sale horses and stuff is something is good. And if we can get ourselves into a position where we can earn a good living,
Mhm.
and have nice horses. I think those two things are really nice. If you could have nice horses and earn a good living, that's
Mhm.
a goal, and go to some great shows and stuff. That's a real goal. Riding, and we've all done it, riding the rough ones and the tough ones, and the ones that lawn dart you and buck you off, and all of those sort of things. We've all had to do it,
Mhm.
and things. But I think from like 50 onwards, 50 to quite like, I just like to think I've got a beautiful team of horses. I don't
You've paid your dues. Yeah, you put the time in. I know. Well, and it's so nice here too, because it, again, on the Florida side, it's really easy to train horses here, and there's now so many beautiful venues so close. I mean, you can go show jumping down in Venice. You go to WEC, you can jump indoors. Like the event down at Terra Nova is beautiful. There's just a lot of beautiful things to do here, and if you have 2 or 3 nice horses, it's like away you go. It's a nice way to live. Okay, I'm going to get into some of these questions, and I'm so bad, and I did not give you a long heads up with the questions that I texted you. Did you get them?
I did.
Okay.
I had a quick look. I have actually got some ideas. So
good. I completely spaced, but I figured that you were pretty good on the fly. So we do wrap with these questions on every podcast. They're super interesting, and it just gets a little bit deeper into knowing you, and so people are really excited about it. So you can have one pass. If there's one question you don't like, you can have one pass. But I expect you to answer all 5.
Yep.
All right. The first one is, what is the biggest lesson a horse has taught you about yourself?
So it's kind of like, I would like to say, what have horses taught me? And it starts, they've taught me patience and flexibility, because when you are producing horses and when you're young, all you want to do is jump in the big shows, go to the big competitions, and think you're going to go to the next World Games and Olympics, and you push and you push and you push, and things go wrong, and things can go right. But it takes a vast amount of experience to learn that when things aren't going so well, or to see the signs when things aren't going the right way, you've got to learn to be patient. You've got to be able to change your plan, and you've got to think of the welfare of the horse above your own ambitions.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's what horses have taught me. And I have had horses in the past where I've tried too hard, and there have been injuries and things have gone on, and now I talk about this with my wife a lot, with Ruthie. I'd say, when we get to the stage where we're pushing the too hard basket, it's time to stop and think and rearrange what needs to happen.
Yeah, so I like that. Putting the welfare of your horse above your own ambition. That's pretty powerful. Yeah. Do you have a favorite training or competition mantra that you reference regularly?
I've got 2.
I'm excited.
One is, don't get your ambitions mixed up with your capabilities.
Ooh.
Okay. My friend and I, Dan, this is one thing that we say. We usually say it when we're talking about someone else. Okay. That they've got their ambitions mixed up with their capabilities. All right. But that is one of the things you do. You've got it. All right.
Those have to align.
Yeah, they do. They need to align. And the other one, now, don't take this the wrong way. Okay.
Okay. I'll try not to.
If you hang around with horses too long, you will look like a horse.
Is that a competition mantra?
No. This is a life lesson for people, okay?
Okay.
And what it really means is, have other interests in your life as opposed to just horses. Okay, you can't just be so tunnel visioned about horses that your only conversation is horse. That the only thing you can do is go to a horse show.
Right.
All right. There are some people that do end up physically looking like horses, but I didn't say
Does
that.
the same thing happen with dogs? Because I've seen that.
Well, yeah. I mean, but you see what I'm saying, okay?
Yeah.
So keep an open mind. We love our horses, we love our sport, but there are other things in life that we can enjoy and we can do.
Yeah, for the sake of our appearance.
Yeah.
I like it. Is there a piece of advice someone gave you along the way that you still reference today?
So I was given the advice by my great uncle, who was a famous racehorse trainer in England. And he said, when the horses are running well, you can get after the staff a bit, you can get everything cleaned up and ship shape and all the rest of it. And when the horses aren't going so well, you've got to treat people with kid gloves. Now, what it really means is when everything's going great, it's great. But there are going to be times of adversity where you can't just, expect everyone to be unbelievable. Things are going to go wrong and you've got to be able to adjust yourself. Okay. And the other thing is that always, it doesn't matter who the trainer is, listen to everybody, because you might just learn something. Okay. This is very important. It's, just because you might not like this person, they ride a bit funny or whatever, you know what I mean? Always keep an open mind. And listen, and that's what I was told very, very early on. And it's very true, because you just never know what you might glean off someone, or might learn.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I think that was something that took me a little bit to figure out, is that sounds weird, but that I didn't have to like everyone that I rode with, like I kind of got a little bit for a while there that I had to have the complete, 100%, really respect, really, they have to be a good upstanding. And I think from riding with some people that were the complete opposite when I was younger, I just went the other way. And then I realized I was missing a lot of information from people that were really excellent at what they did, because I got a little bit on my high horse about the morality of some things, when it was actually just ridiculous. Like you said, everybody has something to teach. And if you can stay open about it, you're going to get a lot.
Yeah.
further.
I mean, you don't have to like everyone, for sure. And there's going to be things that people do that wind you up, and you think, how could they do that, or whatever it is. But especially at from a teaching point of view, or, reading books and that sort of thing, listen to people, something. Don't be afraid of going to, train at a different clinic with someone or whatever. Because, if you're on the fence about it, do it, because you might just learn something.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. What do you do when you are seeking inspiration?
Now, what I do is, and I don't do it enough, but I go and have a lesson from a legend, right? And so if I'm going past Virginia, I'll go and listen with Jimmy Wofford, right? Because he's a legend. And what comes out of his mouth, I stand there like this with my mouth open, because I'm like a sponge, right? And that gives me inspiration. Okay. Yeah. I go away from a lesson with someone like that, just buzzing, I'm just seriously, I go away from lesson. If it's all gone really well, I'm just buzzing, even if it hasn't gone well, I love that. I love getting, like I said, I don't do it enough, but that's what I do. If I need inspiration, I'm trying like draw off someone that's like one of my big idols or something like that.
Yeah, that also helps with I find that helps re-inspire my teaching and my clinics. If I learn something new or you pick something up, you're like, oh, sweet, I'm so pumped. Because it's almost like you go to a clinic and then you get to try out that thing on 25 people. See,
I know. And it's really inspiring. Like I used to go and train with Albert Vaughan when I was living in England. I used to take the ferry, drive across to Belgium, spend 3 days training. He would teach a clinic in this place outside Brussels. And I'd stay in the horse box and they had these very average stables at this very average barn, but it had it indoor so it didn't get wet. And I used to go in the group lessons. I'd be in the meter 20 group lesson, with my Olympic horse and stuff, and with these local riders, and I'd be watching and learning and stuff, and I'd ask questions if there's something about whatever, and I'd come away from that, and it was all clear in my mind. All the things I'd been wondering about and stuff. And that was hugely inspiring too. It was just like, it's all clear. I know what to do.
Right.
Now, this is what I do. So,
you can just pay someone and they tell you what to do.
Right. Well,
it's amazing.
But it kind of needs to be someone, I guess, that you really look up to, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, that's awesome. All right. And our last question. Have you had an experience or an adversity separate from horses in your life that has directly influenced you as a horseman?
I thought long and hard about this, and it's a tricky one, and I almost have to pass. But what I'm going to say is it's kind of been the opposite. It's kind of been that I grew up in this massive horse family with horses everywhere and stuff, and I sort of didn't really know anything outside of it. So as far as like it's sort of, the horses have kind of taught me how to deal with life on the other way, if it makes any sort of sense at all. And so not outside horses. I mean, but it's also helped me to do the other things that I enjoy, such as cooking, snowboarding, learning to fly, airplane. These other things that it's helped me to sort of to do. Because I've sort of been in this, I've learned these skills, but it's also given me life skills too.
Right.
Probably not the answer to the question, but I mean, yeah.
No, it's really interesting. No, it's really, really interesting. Yeah. It kind of goes back to sometimes like being in the horses. I think longevity in the horse sports as you evolve in it, like you really have to enjoy learning and change, because, and like you said, being flexible, because they're always teaching you or showing you something different. And if you need the same, you're not going to be very happy. If you can embrace the change and learn to learn, then going into anything new, cooking, snowboarding, flying, any of those things, which I didn't know you flew as well, gives you an ability to learn and a kind of, but you seem to have an innate kind of, I mean, just listening to an innate, I don't know if the right word is like bravery or ability to go into kind of unique and different situations and just kind of be cool with it, like travel all over and chat with whomever and, kind of go with the flow kind of and embrace every situation and learn. And I think one of the words that, in Matthew McConaughey's book, it's just pivot in whatever direction kind of it seems like the right direction to go is. I mean, that seems to come naturally to you. I don't know if it does or if that's something that you ever think about or you just.
I think probably it does sort of come naturally, but I just think that the things that make up me as a person kind of make it easy for me. I mean, I enjoy the traveling. I enjoy meeting new people. I enjoy
Yeah.
eating strange food. And different things. And I enjoy socializing, and I enjoy outdoor sports, and I obviously enjoy adrenaline rush. So, you know, that's been all of that sort of thing. And, you know, like there's been times where when I was, you know, there was times where I've just had to pinch myself and say, you know, there was one time where we ended up in this like cellar of this Italian vineyard, and the old guy, 90 years old, brings out this giant block of Parmigiano and all this beautiful ham, and we're taking drinks from underneath these big barrels of wine, and I kind of had to say, and I was like in early 20s, Joe, what you really are here doing this, experiencing this, you know, it was cool. And so that's kind of the, you know, like sort of being in a castle in Spain eating a suckling pig. A lot of people won't like that, but just stuff like that, you know, like stuff. Just out there stuff. I really enjoy and meeting the people and doing stuff. And I guess like, and I'm not going to say cool because I wouldn't say that about myself, but I'd say more relaxed because I've probably done it for a bit now. And I'm kind of like, I'm also pretty comfortable in my own skin and things. And I think that a little bit older, you become a bit more secure and stuff. And if you're in a great relationship and things like that, it all just makes you just be able to deal with things a lot better.
Yeah. Well, to be able to, like, your energy is pretty infectious and pretty joyful. And if you can be present in those moments, then the things that don't quite go so well probably don't seem, you know, like you can handle it a little bit more because there's that balance thing, you know.
Look, don't worry, there's plenty of times when I want to slip my wrists, okay? You know, there's plenty of times, and there's times when I'm like, oh no, if that hadn't happened, and now it's going to affect this and this, and I'm lucky enough that I've got a fabulous wife who is kind of like, she might say something a bit tough to me, or she might be just like whatever or something. And, you know, but to get yourself into perspective, you know, things aren't so bad. There is another day, you know. Sometimes it's not so easy when what do they call it? The little chimp thing on your shoulder is like, and things have gone bad. It's not easy in the moment to say, oh, everything's going to be great, but give it 24 hours or 48 hours and say, right, start with plan B. Yeah.
100%. Well, this has just been so lovely. What a lovely Wednesday. Is it Wednesday?
Yeah.
How amazing. Well, this has been awesome. I appreciate you so much in coming and sharing all of your energy and your experiences. And I mean, this has been pretty inspirational for me because it just seems like just the flow that you have as you go into each new experience and adventure just reinvigorates you and the people around you, and maybe the people around you and the horses around you do a little bit the same. So it was really, really awesome, and I can't thank you enough.
You're so welcome. No, it's been awesome to be here. Yeah.
Yay. And so if where can people follow you? I saw your website, and then people can find you on Facebook if they want to call you.
You can find me
shopping.
on Facebook is Joe Meyer, and my website is joemeyereventing.com. And my Twitter handle is Joe Meyer EVNTR, but I'm having a Twitter sabbatical right now. And we are on Instagram.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Insta.
But I think it's like Joe Meyer or Joe Meyer Eventing on Insta. And I've got my girls in the barn doing it because they're like so much better at it than me. And it's actually really quite cool now. They've got some really cool clips up. So yeah.
All right. Well, we will send all your fans and your new fans that direction. And and this has been awesome. So have a wonderful night. What are you cooking tonight? Anything exciting?
Well, actually, I did the cooking last night. I put a pork joint in the smoker, so it's pulled pork. I've got a friend over from New Zealand, and they don't really get that a lot at home, so it's very southern cooking: pulled pork and coleslaw and potato salad.
After my heart. This is the struggle is real. I'm married to a vegetarian, so I might be over there in 10 minutes.
Oh, don't worry. I'll help you out.
Thank you. All right, Joe. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Sinead. See you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I really hope you enjoyed that conversation. Before you go, I just want to let you know more about Ride IQ. At its core, Ride IQ gives everyone access to instruction from the best equestrian coaches in the world. It might sound impossible, but with Ride IQ, you get access to the private mobile app that has hundreds of on-demand, listen-while-you-ride audio lessons taught by top riders and coaches in eventing, hunter jumpers, and dressage. Here's how it works. You look through the app and choose a lesson based on your horse or a skill you're working on. There are lessons for green off-the-track thoroughbreds and nervous horses and horses that are behind the leg, as well as lessons that teach every stage of skills like shoulder in or trot lengthenings. Then you tack up and press play, and you have a top coach like Doug Payne or Leslie Law or Gina Smith in your ear guiding you every step of the way. If you enjoyed today's episode, it is always appreciated if you can take a moment to share the podcast with your friends and family and leave a review on your podcast app. The best way to support the podcast is to become a Ride IQ member at ride-iq.com. And when you do, we hope you're excited to see that In Stride is just one of multiple podcast shows on the app, including hack chats, conversations with coaches, and more. And lastly, I wanted to let you know that our friends over at Major League Eventing also have a podcast. And if you enjoyed this show, I think you would also really enjoy their show. Just search for the Major League Eventing podcast in your podcast app and give it a listen. Have a wonderful week, and please do press follow or subscribe on whatever podcast platform you listen on. And as always, remember to pat your horse.